There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with it's a Thursday night reads because my poor dear husband, nothing serious, but he is struggling with insomnia and has, of late, again, it's a recurring problem in his life. Like I say, nothing serious. I don't need anybody to worry about him, but he has having trouble getting out of bed. Because he's awake half the night. So when I don't have a chance to go outside to do a Friday reads, it makes my Friday reads filming schedule a little bit problematic. So I decided, since he's not home from work yet tonight, and I have finished everything that I'm going to finish, I might as well film my Friday reads Thursday night and save my marriage. So, and I'm wearing a shirt that I like the colors, but I don't think I've ever seen it, or not for a long time. I forgot I had it, and I realized why I don't wear it. This collar never is flat, and I don't like this, but it looked way too stupid doing up the top button. And you can't see it, but farther down, this is always folded over. I don't use an iron, but it just always like that way, so that because of those flaws, I never wear this shirt. But maybe you don't like it anyway. You'll tell me in the comments below. Is this a Sean blouse or not? I have had a far better week than what I'm going to report to you will suggest. In other words, the books that I finished were kind of but I'm reading a bunch of other good books and, having a good time in my reading life. But a little bit mediocre, what I have to tell you. So no bales. I better get busy. I'm starting to lose my DNF edge. And I finished 3 books. So I finished the Moroccan novel About My Mother by Tahar Ben Jelloun, and I didn't end up liking it very much. It was about, I think it was very autobiographical, and it was about his mother's prolonged decline, especially cognitive decline. I was really interested in the details that we learned quite early in the novel about her life. Her life was fascinating, and that was a window on Moroccan culture that was also fascinating, and I found it very accessible. And I was Googling everything that I didn't know about, and she grew up in the city Fez, and a lot of description of the wall Medina. That's the name of the inner wall in the city, and the most famous spiritual place, I've forgotten the name, but that was rich and a colorful part of the reading experience. And she was so far gone cognitively that she wasn't making sense. And I said maybe last week that it was an interesting way for Jelloun to kind of interrogate memory and how trustworthy or untrustworthy, because half the time when she was talking to the first person narrator, her son, she thought it was one of her husbands, or she thought it was her dead brother, and she was always mixed up about that. And I have to say that got really tedious for me after a while. I think this novel would have been more powerful if it had been half as long, because it just went on, and let's face it, people's decline and even their death can be tedious, can be prolonged. But as a reader, I lost interest about halfway through. I was ready for it to be done, and I just have to say that I didn't get much out of the second half. It was just kind of a rehash of her confusion, and there wasn't much else for me to get from it. It was sad, and she seemed like a really sweet old lady, and had I don't know how old she was, but she was old when she died. And, her life had been fascinating, but so much was made of her cognitive decline that it ceased to be engaging for me. So I gave it 3 stars. I would try something else by him if if it wasn't a similar type of story, sure. And I have just filmed my review of this, which you won't see for months, because my backlog of single book reviews is so long that it'll be probably 2 months before you see it, but I still won't talk about it as much as if I hadn't filmed the review, but I finished yesterday Tamaras Grow by Gerald Murnane, a 1974 Australian novel, his debut, that was recently reprinted and available for the first time outside Australia by, in other words, no, what is it called? I always forget the exact name of this publisher. And Other Stories, and they make this physically beautiful paperbacks, really heavy paper. I just love them. And I gave this 4 stars because it was fascinating and a really stunning work of literature. It wasn't a Sean book. And what else do I want to say about it? Very autobiographical story about a 9-year-old boy who grows up in a Catholic family in some part of Australia, not like a big city, rural kind of small town. And his father is obsessed with horse racing, and usually for worse, but sometimes for better, makes enough money to start his family and get married, but then keeps losing and losing on his bets and so on. And that part of the story wasn't very interesting to me. It was kind of like reading a book that was heavily preoccupied with sports or something. Like I'm just not interested. But the precociousness of the boy, Clement Killiaton's sexuality as a 9-year-old, very interested in seeing girls' underpants and stuff. I thought that was fascinatingly done. And there was something very modernist that Murnane was up to about the way that, especially the kid, every time he looked out into the landscape, suddenly the writing got, half-page long sentences that were envisioning map-making and conquest and colonialism in a way that was jaw-droppingly beautiful. I couldn't read another Murnane. I can't read another Murnane for about 5 years because it was kind of a headache-inducing reading experience. And I'm going to be very curious to see how it sits with me in the coming months and years. But I don't know how else to talk about this book. In fact, I probably said it more succinctly and articulately now than in my review. So I was going to say stay tuned for my review, but maybe don't even bother. Maybe I won't publish it. Weird, fantastic, not a Sean book, and I won't soon forget it. And today I finished this novel from India, Trying to Grow by Firdaus Kanga. Originally published, this I think is a first edition, a signed first edition, which I have held up and shown you before many times, from 1990. And this was a buddy read with Jyotsna of Jyotsna's Bookscapades. And ultimately I didn't like the novel that much. There were some things that I really liked, but the things that I didn't like bugged me enough that I could only give it 3 stars. It is a gay novel, very autobiographical, about the protagonist's, whose name is, I'm not going to do a full review of this. The protagonist's name is Brit, and it's short not for Britain, although the family that he grew up in, a Parsi family, is very pro-British and mourning the end of the British Empire. It's set much more contemporarily than, it's set much closer to the present than that, but the family is often, his parents are kind of wistful about the British Empire. But that's not why he's named Brit. He's named Brit because he has brittle bone disease, or what is the name of it? Osteogenesis imperfecta. Which means that as a child, his bones break incredibly easily, so he's very fragile, and that in many cases, this disease means that you don't grow past a certain height, and that's true for this main character and for the author. So it's very autobiographical, and I saw the movie many years ago and loved it, although I don't remember anything about the movie now, other than the broad outlines. And he eventually comes out, and there were parts of it that I thought were really touching and important. It's an important book, and if you're interested in disability studies or disability fiction, I think it's worth your time to read it. And I think I enjoyed the sections where he was a young boy with his family more than I did as he approached adulthood, because ultimately, and this is supposed to be embarrassing for somebody for a reader to say I didn't like the main character, but I didn't really like the main character in this novel, and I didn't find a lot of the humor to be appropriate, and I am a pervy gay male, enthusiastically gay reader of literature, and I thought a lot of his sex obsessed comments in the novel as the first person narrator, I just wanted to slap him at times. Like, everything was cock, 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 and jerking off, where in context where it just didn't, it was inappropriate. And I can't believe I'm saying this, because if you asked people that have known me for decades what they think is one of my flaws, it is that I have spent too much of my life talking about sex inappropriately and obsessively, and I'm saying this narrator, he was just over the top. However, the actual representations of sex, he falls in love with his gorgeous straight friend, and that's what makes him realize he's gay, and that relationship was really quite touching, and I loved that part of it. And there was aspects of his relationship with his parents where they were really loving to him, but overly protective, and he wanted some independence, and I thought that was described quite well. But there was a lot of disjunctive stuff emotionally in this book. The whole family had a weird sense of humor, and again, I really appreciated that maybe in the early days, but as he got older and things started happening, and there were some deaths in the novel, and I won't say who, that were kind of described and narrated rather flippantly. Sometimes we saw the narrator's emotions, but other times, when it was a really central person in his life who died, we just kind of moved on in the next page, and it didn't ring true to me at all, and I was bugged by it. So that's why I give it 3 stars. There was things that I admired, there's some things that I quite liked, and some things that I really, really disliked. So you should check it out for yourself. It's not in print, but you can get used copies if you're interested. And I'm curious to see what Ferdas Kango wrote after this. I think he wrote maybe 1 or 2 other books. Seems to me they might have been nonfiction, and this was his debut novel. So that's what I finished. And in terms of what I started, the only one that I did start was this anthology of this collection of Eudora Welty's fiction. This is a buddy read with Brian of Bookish, and we have done the first story, Lily Daw and the Three Ladies, and we both really liked it. It is a classic southern tale about 3 busybody old ladies in a small town that are worrying about the village idiot, if I can put it so politically incorrectly. A woman who has cognitive issues, who grew up in an abusive household and is now on her own. These 3 ladies in the town, one of them is the minister's wife, have been keeping an eye on her and trying to kind of look after her, and she's now to the point where she needs to be sent to an institution, they've decided, and they are going to pay for her to go there. And then there are some romantic complications, and it is funny and profound in equal measure. Absolutely loved it. And this is from, I believe, Eudora Welty's debut collection of short stories from 1941. And we're going to carry on. I think I counted a week or so ago, and it was 34 stories, so you probably won't hear me talk about this again for approximately that many weeks. I had thought that I might try this if I made faster progress on my books than I did, so I didn't start it. Butter, Honey, Pig Bread by Francesca Ekweyasi, a Nigerian-Canadian novel. And Lindy sent me a message after she watched my Friday reads, because I said last week, Lindy loved it. She said, no, I didn't. I actually didn't love it. I liked some things about it, but I had trouble with other things. She didn't authorize me to tell you that, but I think that's publicly available on her Goodreads. And she wasn't upset, but I had misremembered it, because we talked about this on the Giller Prize video, and at that point I went back to watch. No, she hadn't actually got a copy of it and was looking forward to reading it. This will still be a backup for Black History Month, or sometime in the near future thereafter. So we are almost at the end of January, and I have 3 other books of the 6 of the Magic 6 that I started at the beginning of the month, and I plan to finish at least 2 of them, hopefully 3, before Monday, February 1st. So that means that I'm going to start 5 or 6 new books on Monday, and I am so excited. I've already posted my Black History Month TBR, and so I'm going to now tell you which of those books I will definitely be starting. And then I'm also going to talk about my Invisible Cities picks for February. And there's going to be one that I might not start until later if I don't finish the 6th book by the end of this month. Oh, and I also want to read at least 1 book a month, hopefully more, but at least 1 book a month that is not on a TBR and is not part of Invisible Cities. It might be a new release that I've pre-ordered, or a book that's been sitting on my shelf forever that isn't ever going to fit into any readathon or anything like that. So why don't I start with that, because I am really excited to start this new release, Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. This is a transgendered novel by a transgender writer, just published a few weeks ago, and I watched a Zoom event with the author, which I very much enjoyed. They were interviewed by, oh boy, famous American writer whose short story I loved in an anthology that I read with Heidi of My Reading Life last year. That author's name has gone out of my head. She also wrote a book about Hillary Clinton, a fictional book that a lot of people didn't like and I have no desire to read. So I don't remember that author's name. It was a great interview that she did with Tori Peters. And this novel, well, I don't know if it's going to be a Sean book. It sounds really interesting. It is about a circle of friends that are, it's kind of, I believe I've heard it described as a literary novel that's kind of like Sex and the City for trans characters. And Tori Peters I was really impressed with them, and I can't wait to start it. It's chunky, and it's going to be very different from anything I've ever read. I will be devastated if I don't love it, because I'm really, really pumped to start on Monday. For Black History Month, the 2 that I will definitely be starting next week are Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, because it's chunky, and I'm going to do it as an audio text combo, and it's going to take me the month to get through it. And as you might remember, the other times I've mentioned this book on my channel, I studied it in grad school and just ran out of time and only read half of it, was loving it, ran out of time, never finished it. Is it 30 years? It probably is 30 years since then, and I'm finally going to finish this sucker. But I'm going to start at the beginning, obviously, and hopefully I will enjoy it as much as I did way back then. And this somewhat of a new release, The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. This is a gay novel, a love story between 2 enslaved black men in the, back in the slavery era of America. It's been getting rave reviews, and this will be a buddy read with Ollie Bliss, and we will be starting on Monday. I will be shocked if I don't love this based on the early reviews, and Greg's loving it. And yeah, here's my mini 5-star prediction video in the middle of my Friday reads. I will be shocked if it's not a 5-star read. And here are the 2. Oh, have I got that right? The Invisible Cities thingy. What is it? It's not a readathon. It's maybe it's a readathon, a year-long readathon, Invisible Cities, where the organizers, I'll put all the details in the show notes, choose 3 countries every month that are typically not the countries that most people read when they read international fiction, that we should read books from. So the two of the 3 countries that I will be starting next week, and I'm so excited about both of them. This one, Palace Walk by Naguib Mahfouz. This is the first in his Cairo trilogy. I've been wanting to read this trilogy for decades, and I'm finally going to get to it. I got the paper copy, and there's an audiobook on Scribd, unabridged, that I like the narrator's voice, so I'm going to do this one as an audio text combo, and I'm expecting good things of this as well. Apparently the main character is a gentle, oppressed married woman and her cloistered daughters and 3 sons. And the action takes place between the 2 world wars, and this is the first in the series. I am really stoked to finally be getting to this. And the other book that I'm planning to start for Invisible Cities on Monday, because it is very chunky, is this novel from China, Ma Jian's Beijing Coma, which I've had on my shelf for a few years. I thought I had read a novella by him, but I turned out no, it was another author named Ma something else. But I really want to read this one. This one is an intriguing premise. One of the protesters at the Tiananmen Square protests in 1989, right, was shot in the head, and he has lain comatose for years and years since then, and this story is told through his consciousness. And it has a biblically troubling page count, 666 pages. I haven't heard much about it, but what I've heard is that it's really great. And another fascinating thing about the author, Ma Jian, is that his wife, it doesn't actually say here that they're married, but I'm assuming they are, or certainly his romantic partner, Flora Drew, is also his translator, and they live in London with their 4 children. Looking forward to getting started with this one. Now, I believe that was 5, if I've been counting right, and I'm, on my 3rd glass of wine, so I'm not going to insist that I have counted correctly. If I finish the other book that I hope to finish up over the weekend, then I will be starting, or as soon as I do finish that other book, I will be starting this short story collection, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha Filia. And I've heard nothing but good about this, and it's short, and I have it on audio. I might do it as an audio-text combo, but this one, if I don't get it started next week, I will easily be able to start it after that, and all will be well. Whew, I am just really looking forward to completely transforming my reading life on February 1st, 2021. Oh, and if you were wondering what is the 3rd country for Invisible Cities in February, it is Colombia. But I will keep my pick for a Colombian novel, for a Colombian book, secret until next time. And that is all I have to say. Thanks for watching.